All right, let's dive into a story that honestly sounds almost made up. We're talking about how a nation of hundreds of millions, staring down the barrel of catastrophic famine, somehow managed to pull off one of the greatest agricultural turnarounds in all of human history. But, as you'll see, this revolution, born out of a crisis, also planted the seeds for a whole new set of challenges we're still dealing with today.
So, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at why farming is just so fundamental to India's identity. Then, we'll explore the crisis that nearly brought it to its knees. After that, we'll watch the revolution unfold, unpack its really complicated legacy, and finally connect it all to the food security challenges India is grappling with right now. Let's start at the beginning.
Okay, so before we can even get to the revolution part, we've got to understand what was being revolutionized, right? In India, agriculture wasn't just another industry. For centuries, it was the very heartbeat of the entire nation.
Now, when we're talking about agriculture, we're really talking about what economists call the primary sector. Think of it as the foundation of everything. All the stuff we get directly from the earth, like crops, fish, timber, you name it. It's the starting point for the entire economy.
And here is a number that just puts everything into perspective. When India became independent, a jaw-dropping 72% of the entire population depended on agriculture for their livelihood. Just let that sink in. It wasn't a job for some people. It was life for nearly 3 out of every 4 people in the country. And believe me, the country's leaders knew it. India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, laid it out in the clearest possible terms. If agriculture fails, the nation fails. Period. It was that simple and that serious.
But here's the massive problem. Even though everyone knew how critical it was, the agricultural system in India after independence was just broken. It was riddled with problems and was teetering on the edge of a total collapse.
It was like a perfect storm, really. You had all these issues piling on top of each other. Way too many people trying to farm tiny little plots of land, using methods that hadn't changed for centuries. They couldn't get loans to improve things, and even if they had a good harvest, they often didn't have a good way to store or sell it. But the biggest issue, the one that overshadowed everything, was the weather.
This vulnerability was so central to everything that people had a name for it. They called it a gamble of monsoons. I mean, just imagine that. An entire nation's ability to feed itself year after year was literally a bet on when and how much rain would fall. And it was a bet they were starting to lose, badly.
And look, this wasn't just some poetic phrase. The numbers prove it. Decades after independence, a full 60% of India's farmland had no permanent irrigation whatsoever. None. They were completely 100% at the mercy of the rain. That gamble was very, very real.
So by the mid-1960s, the situation was getting desperate. I mean, really dire. India was facing severe food shortages and was depending on aid from other countries just to stop people from starving. Something big, something radical had to change. And this was the moment the Green Revolution was born.
And the solution came from these two incredible minds. It all started with an American scientist, Dr. Norman Borlaug, whose groundbreaking work in Mexico created these amazing new high-yield seeds. Then, his work was brought to India and adapted by the visionary M.S. Swaminathan, the man who would rightly become known as the father of India's Green Revolution.
Now, this is super important to understand. This wasn't just about finding some kind of miracle seed. The real genius was what they called the package program. See, these new seeds could produce a ton of grain, but only if you gave them the full VIP treatment. Lots of water, powerful fertilizers, and protection from bugs. It was an all-or-nothing deal. If you left out even one of those pieces, the whole thing would fall apart.
And the results? Well, they were nothing short of mind-blowing. Just look at this chart. Food production went from around 51 million tons to over 330 million tons. That's not just growth, that's an explosion. India went from begging for food to being able to feed itself. The gamble had finally paid off.
But you know, a change this massive, this fast, it's never simple. It sent shockwaves through the entire Indian society and economy, creating this really complex mix of amazing successes and some serious unforeseen problems.
It really was a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you had these incredible wins. India could finally feed itself, and a lot of farmers got richer. But there was a dark side. The benefits were mostly for just a few crops, like wheat and rice. And because that whole package of seeds and chemicals cost money, it was often the bigger, wealthier farmers who could afford it, which meant the gap between them and the smaller farmers just got wider.
And this right here perfectly illustrates that inequality. The revolution didn't happen everywhere at once. It first took hold in states like Punjab and Haryana that already had better irrigation and infrastructure. They became the nation's breadbaskets and got incredibly wealthy, while other parts of the country were kind of left behind.
And that brings us right up to today. The Green Revolution solved one enormous problem: production. India can now grow enough food for everyone. But in solving that problem, it uncovered a new one, a challenge that might be even tougher: making sure all that food actually gets to every single person who needs it.
So the big goal now is something called food security. And this is a huge shift in thinking. It's not just about having enough grain stored in a warehouse somewhere. It's a three-part promise: that food is available, it's accessible, and it's affordable for everyone, all the time.
So let's break down those three pillars, because they're key. Availability, that's the easy one. The food just has to exist. Accessibility means it has to physically be where people are. But affordability, that's often the biggest hurdle. You can have a market full of food, but if people don't have the money to buy it, it might as well not be there. If any one of those pillars breaks, the whole system fails.
To try and tackle this, India has built one of the largest food safety nets on the entire planet. It involves keeping a massive buffer stock of grain, running a public distribution system that gets cheap food to the poor through what are called ration shops, and even providing free meals to millions of kids at school.
And this right here, this gets to the absolute heart of the challenge today. The main problem is no longer in the fields, it's in people's wallets. The food is there, the production problem is solved, but for the most vulnerable people, the economic power to actually buy that food just isn't.
So that leaves us with this one big question for the future. The Green Revolution was this monumental, world-changing success in solving a crisis of production. The great challenge for India now is to engineer an equally brilliant solution for the crisis of access, to finally make sure that the feast that started in the fields reaches every single plate in the nation.